Yeah. So, so my title is effectively engaging with the artificial intelligence to formulate assessment strategies for minimizing academic misconduct. It's a big title because I am more or less a cat in the middle because as far as AI is concerned, it's just like a marmite. Either you love it or you hate it. So I am in the middle because there are some AI generated stuff. We need it. We need to incorporate that to minimize our workload as an academics. On the other hand, we need to make sure that the students do not use it or abuse it in a way that affect academic integrity. So next slide, please. So when anybody says about the AI, the first thing they come to the misappropriation is, or malappropriation is, the artificial intelligence is Chat GPT. But Chat GPT is only a part. So that's what I come up with this, what I call sentence. All form of Chat GTPs are generative pre-trained transformers, but all generative pre-trained transformers are not Chat GPT. So that's the first lesson we need to learn, because Chat GPT is only a part of the wider context of AI. And some AI has already been successfully used in healthcare. I mean, my background is pharmacology and biomedical science. Healthcare professions, the AIs has been used effectively. So what we are going to talk about, the generative pre-trained transformers, including Chat GTPs, and how we can manage the students not to overly using the Chat GTP up to the extent that become challenge for academic integrity. The next slide, please. So the aim and the objective is more or less, first part is me and the second part is all of you. The early mornings, after breakfast, you might go into sleep, so I don't want that to happen. So the first part, I will explain about the exploring the way. Again, this is not the perfect way. This is the way we handle, and we found it successful. But it might be, you might have different opinion, different ideas as well. And the second part, we can have a discussion based on the presentation I have given you. So then again, the photograph I took is the advertisement from Chat GPT, social media advertisement. It's saying it's come, this image of a man comes and asks you, ask me anything you want, we will write everything for you. And then I always show this to my student and ask, if a man looking like him comes to real life and then ask you to, oh, can we play with you, do you accept him? So that is just to, terrify them, but, that is the advertisement. So next slide. So again, I tried my level best to find some data from the European-wide universities, how they handle the AI or Chat GTP. I couldn't find it. And even for UK universities, I couldn't find it in a form of manuscript. I only found it in a blog by scribbler.com. So 61% of the UK universities, they do not have, as of 19th of June, that is where I downloaded this, June 2023, 61% there is no clear policies against AI yet. 8% the tools are banned or outright. Again, there are so many controversies regarding that. 9% the tools are banned by default unless instructions say otherwise. So now some universities are giving the authority to the instructors. But the problem is, as one of the person who are interested in academic integrity, and then I lead the academic integrity in my university, most of the academics, they themselves are not clear. So they are coming to us, what is the policy? So it's a vicious circle. Then the 10% of the universities, individual instructors decide their own policies for now, just for now, because this is one of, I think my university comes in that 10% because At the moment, they are developing a policy. It is getting delayed until now, until they come develop the policy. The instructors they can decide. And another 12% tools are allowed with citation unless the instructors prohibit it. So that means they can use it, but if the individual instructor say, no, you can't use it in my assessment, you can. So can you see, even in one country, there are different type of approaches because of the new, I call it threat or the opportunity, either way. So this is the problem we have. So again, Thomas will talk about the ethical side of it, and Irene will talk about how to develop the policies. And here I'm going to highlight that there is a problem and people are looking into that. And then as academics and as future academics, I think PhD students, I always consider them as their future academics. And some of you are more or less started teaching and how they can handle by effective assessment methodology. And some of the areas, like my area, is easy to come up with innovative assessment because it is more or less the questions are based on applications rather than the reproduction. But for example, I mean, it's in my point of view, if there is a history, then coming up with the effective assessment or smart assessment might be difficult because it's more or less the expectation is to remember an event that happened in the past and reproduce it. So next slide, please. So at this point, we will think about, again, this is where the established lecturers, you can go to sleep now, the PhD student, what is all about assessment? What is the purpose of assessment? This is the definition, I got it from one of the dictionaries. To gauge students' learning by a series of measurements. Series of measurement can be evaluation, analysis, audit, and setting up a goal or measurement. Various methods of and techniques. What are the various methods of techniques? Mainly exam, and then there's the famous and is going to be redundant or already been redundant is essay, and the other practical assessment, practical test or critical analysis, paper reviewing, anything. That are the various methods and techniques. And the aim is to refine and improve the student learning capabilities. But we need to think ourselves whether we are doing that. Because nowadays, I come to realize that the students are learning for marks. They are not learning for learning's sake. And they are learning for grades. And we are thinking about how to grade. And that concept needs to change. I'm not saying that everyone does that, but most of the time, their aim is the degree with the first class or degree with the 2, and so on and so forth. So how are we going to handle this? So what is the assessment cycle would look like? The next slide, please. So if you go one by one. So is it learning? Learning normally, when we studied, every part of learning is assessed. I can remember that in one module I studied, I submitted about 15 different submissions. It's questions or essays or things. Now, many universities are employing to more or less one assessment or 2 assessments. And some universities are even thinking about the assessment as a whole course, not the module, as a course. Right, so assessment has got two type of assessment. One is looking for reproduction, which I don't like it. Some of you might like it, but I don't like it because it's just anybody who has got a memory power of memorizing and reproducing, they can get higher mark. And that is where the Chat GPT comes and help more as well. The other one is the application. The application that they need to apply something they learn in a different situation. So situational analysis. So both, the next one please. The both will be given a feedback, and the feedback, the aim of the feedback is to give the student something that they can carry on. Where this is the mistake, how can you improve the mistake, the next time he will learn it. But in my university, not many of the students, but some students, they don't read, they only check the grade, and that's it. And also because of, those days when I started as a lecturer, the maximum class size is 30 to 35. But we got now 400 students. And most of the time, those of you who are involved in the workload planning, we can only give 20 minutes per script to mark. Otherwise, the academics will struggle. And how long they have to give the feedback. That is the problem. The feedback is becoming lesser and lesser, and students are more worried about the grade than the feedback. So that's another problem. Then according to the feedback, students will revise, and then you will revise your approach as well. And then next one, you got to scaffold the progression, and then students continue with the learning as well. Right? So this is the cycle. So learning is embedded in the assessment, and the assessment is embedded in the learning. Not always happening, but this is what it should happen. Next slide. So again, this is another slide. Most of the established academics already know. There are 3 types of learning: an assessment of learning, assessment for learning, and assessment as learning. Okay, somebody else also teaching, that's good. So the assessment of learning is more or less summative journal in nature. So most of the time it will be an end of module exam or end of topic exam or essays. It's more or less whether the student have understood. And it is the test for memory and reproduction. Anybody who can memorize and reproduce, they can get a higher mark. I mean, I think there was an incident happened in my previous university. There's one international student was accused of plagiarizing in the exam. Actually, she answered word to word from the lecture notes it was given. And then knowing the student's background, where she came from my original part of area in Southeast Asia. So I know that they have the capacity of memorizing anything you want them to memorize. If you give a Bible, ask them to memorize, they can memorize and reproduce. I mean, I had the ability before, but now getting old, right? So what happened was the question was based on the topics that was covered in the lecture. And the lecture notes is the perfect answer for the question. She memorized it. She just reproduced it. So who is to blame? The student or the lecturer who asked the question? Because the question is written in such a way that anybody who can memorize and reproduce, then they will do the job. But whether they have learned anything about it, we don't know. But most of the essay type question, if you are not careful in setting up those questions, you will end up having memorizing and reproducing. The next one is the assessment for learning. This is slightly better. It ensures learning via assessment. So it makes sure that it can be given in both formative form or summative form. I mean, some of us, we do it formative, so that means we give a question for them to do, and then we give some feedback. It's not assess at all. It's just for them to learn. But you can do it as summative form as well. And the main aim of this assessment for learning is to understand and apply in a different situation or related situation. That is how their cognitive skills will improve. Right? Rather than teaching them 2 plus 2 is 4 and then asking them what is 2 plus 2, then we can ask something else, a higher. I mean, again, because I'm a pharmacologist, we ask this kind of questions, and then most of one of the students who said jokingly that you teach us perfectly about how to make rice, and then in the exam you ask how to make biryani. Right? That is application. That is application. So that is the assessment for learning. It can be quizzes, concept map, essays, some kind of essays. We call it structured essays, and the laboratory report. Better than that is the assessment as learning. So assessment is learning actually. And again, those of you who have got practical class like computer scientists, biomedical scientists, medicine and everything, we got practical classes. We ask them to assess it. We just give a urine sample, that's it. Go and analyze it and say, tell what is wrong with them. But in order to analyze and understand and everything, they need to know the methods. They need to know what the normal urine would look like, and then how the disease urine will change. So it's a providing the opportunity to monitor. We can monitor them doing it. But remember, as we go along, the time that will take for us to be involved increases as well. Right? There's no what I call easy win situation here. We need to input as well. And then, it ensures learning via assessment, and it's more or less testing the understanding and the application. So it can be self and peer assessed, and some of the peer assessed marking is much more robust than ours. Not everyone, but some of them, they are very robust, and by peer marking, they themselves are learning. Portfolio development, especially in UK, the biomedical scientists, they need to develop their own portfolio. That means what are the skills they have studied and how it is going to help them to apply in the industry when they go on. So by doing that, they need to do a reflective practice. So those kind of things are assessment that's learning. So the more and more you go this way, the more difficult for the students to use the AI assisted answers or Chat GPT or whatever. The next slide. And again, this is actually Dr. Linda McClever. She's a librarian, I think, probably you know her, sorry. Just quoting her, if our assessment of students' learning and skill is based on assessment that asks them to regurgitate easily tested facts and processes, we are not doing anything valuable. That is true as well, because if you can they can remember, memorize and reproduce or regurgitate, then that is not the assessment. And again, unfortunately, because of the workload, some of the lecturers are moving still towards that. It's easy to assess that way, but that also gives problems. Next slide. So now, at this point, so I gave some ideas about how the assessment should be, how we need to think about. Now think about artificial intelligence and, the Chat GPT, all sort of things that I don't know, and all because I'm a bit nervous about going into this area because I am in a computer IT department, and you know better than me. But the only thing I know is that the natural language processing is part of the AI. There are AI. For example, neural networks. I think very long time ago, when I was doing a PhD, one of my co-PhD students, he was developing neuronal network to do genomic analysis. And he was successful, and then, he has got a spin-off company now. He's doing very well now. So that is one part. Speech, how to, all these mobile phone, you can transform the speech into text, that is also AI, robotic is AI, visionary management is AI. All those things are big data analysis is AI. But out of all AI, most of them are useful. Not most of them, almost all of them are useful. Even the natural language processing are useful, but it is us who are abusing it rather than the other way around. So the next one. So the generative AI is part of the natural language processing. So next one. The generative AI is only a division within the wider AI rather than just, whenever we say, especially to my colleagues, AI means it's Chat GPT. And that is one of the things that we need to work hard on the colleague side of it, how to manage that as well. The next slide. So the generative artificial intelligence in my point of view, there are 3 areas that can be threats to the assessment. So I'm only worried about, at this presentation, I only worried about the assessment. First one is the essay-based assessment. That becomes a questionable one. The next one, sorry. So if it is knowledge reproduction task, it's easy. Chat GPT or even any other AI. Remember, some AI, when we first hear about the Chat GPT, if we ask a question, the students to draw something or write a flow chart, then we can get away with it. But there are other AIs, they can do that for that as well. So anything that is the essay base will become questionable with AI, because ChatGPT and other related AI can produce, maybe superficial, but can produce some kind of answers. And also, in some cases, student can obtain the whole essay. But the adaptability of the essay, acceptability of the essay, we are not sure, because some of the facts are questionable, produced by the ChatGPT is not reliable, but they can get away with writing the essay. And sometimes it's nearly perfect answers. And then that is where we need to think about, I always call it as an academic wisdom. Can this person capable of writing this? Right? So it's an individualized question. You know, if you, after about teaching them for 1 or 2 years, you know how their writing skills improved, and whether all of a sudden there's a big, what I call, chunk of essay which is really attractive, then you need to question that. The second one is redefining marking rubrics. How to avoid lower grades. Lower grades become a problem, because if everybody used ChatGPT, a long time ago, again, I'm going to give you some pharmacology example, please forgive me that. Long time ago, there was a movement amongst the pharmacologists during the what you call drug doping in sports. So some people, they take drugs for performance enhancement. So some of us said, I mean not me, but somebody else has said that, why can't we leave all the athletes, they can take whatever the performance enhancers they can, we don't care, right? That becomes no. But the problem with that, if everybody takes performance enhancers, first of all, it's bad for their health, that's a different thing. And the second one is, everybody will be aim higher and higher and higher. Where is the lower mark? So providing the lower mark, and I'm just giving the examples there, lower mark is going to be a difficult. And then we always give a mark for communication. I mean, we give a mark, say 70% of a mark comes from the scientific knowledge, that the another 30%, how it is communicated. I mean, some students during the plagiarism years, some students have produced similar essays, but one of them written in such a way that the flow through is very easy, so we can flow easily, and that he gets a more mark, but the facts are the same. So that will become redundant, because ChatGPT can individualize writing skills as well, in different way as well. And then there are some subject-based difficulties. I mean, you know, I always say we are blessed because of the applied knowledge, and if there is a reproduction, for example, what is happening in World War II, that kind of question, changing the question might be difficult. And I'm still looking for somebody who I can work closely with, how we can change the assessment in such a way to making it hard to use ChatGPT in subjects like theology or history, how we can do that. So I'm looking for somebody who can collaborate. And the online assessment. You know, online assessment, probably I don't have to say more. During the COVID-19, it was thought it's going to be successful, but I mean, in my point of view, it was not successful at all, because it is actually how we effectively conduct the assessment is going to be a problem, because, you know, student can use the ChatGPT as well. I'll give you one example how they managed it. It's not me, it's one of my colleagues who did it, and I got it printed out, so you can have a look at it as well. And then the processing, marking, and authentication, most importantly, authentication is going to be a problem as well. And again, we don't know whether the student is creatively thinking, whether student has improved his cognitive skills, or is just using AI or Chat GPT. Next one, please. So the strength of the generative AI, they produce plausible responses. Most of the time, they produce relevant and seemingly more credible responses. That's one of the not problem, it's a strength. It's a strength of the AI, and it has got a slight self-improving capacity with the reinforcement by human interaction. When the human give feedback, then it improves. I mean, that's some of the computer scientists, they call it prompting. If you prompt it correctly, they will give the correct answer or improved answer. And then most of the time it will give personalized responses. If you ask a personal question, it will give personalized responses as well. And then it's provide in real time, and also the accessibility of information. I mean, the only difference between the Google search and Chat GPT or any AI is AI give you the essay. Google search will only give you the link. But in a learning process, Google search is better because they got to learn the link and they got to write it on their own language. But Chat GPT give the essays as well. And the weaknesses, on next slide, sorry, is a superficial, most of the time it's a superficial understanding, does not fully grasp the concept, only the words, and accuracy is a big problem, not always, sometimes it makes things up as well. And the risk of bias, which, because these developments are made by mainly the males, and there is a bias against female. That's another problem. And also there's a bias against the minority community and international students as well. And also because the Chat GPT and other generative AIs are using languages as a basic superficial level, sometimes that we wrongly assume, especially international students, their superficial understanding give a superficial essay. Therefore, we will think that it's a Chat GPT who it's wrote it, but it's actually they wrote it, but because the way is superficial, there is a misunderstanding as well. So these are the weaknesses of a generative AI, as I think, and this is actually not my own work, it's actually a compilation of different people's own work. Next slide as well. So this is, I had recently I read a blog by Professor Phil Newton from the Swansea University. He worked on a project called Tilapia, tool for identifying learning assessment potentially impacted by artificially intelligent. And I don't know why he chose the name tilapia, it's a fish. So he is saying that what are the features of assessment that are useful to give generative AI a challenge, or not to make the students to use the generative AI. So he also agreed with me, specific challenging questions that expect the advanced knowledge, process knowledge, not just reproduction. The second one is creative assessment. So that means the student need to produce something in the lab or outside, or ask the student, understand the student, ask the question in such a way the student has understood the concept. So something like Viva. I mean, many universities more or less moved away from Viva because of the fact that it's time consuming. But now I think it's time to bring back the Viva. Even if you suspect something, it might be written by Chat GPT or some other artificial intelligence, then why not have a Viva? If the student answers perfectly, then remember, the aim of the assessment is student understood the concept. Whether he used the Chat GPT to understand the concept or not, that is none of our business. Our problem is that he shouldn't use Chat GPT or AI just for writing it without understanding the concept. So that is how we need to work on that. And the other one is the in-person assessment. That means exam, invigilated exam, and then closed book test. That's the old style one. But we need to do a mixture rather than just going with the old style one. It becomes not innovative. So we need to think about that as well. The next slide. So before we go, I'm going to give only 3 examples of the question, then we can discuss about it, and I'll give you the bioinformatic question as well. So just to summarize, the advantages of generative AI is it can increase the access to the information. It can facilitate personalized and complex learning, decrease teaching workload, because some of our lecturers are using Chat GPT to write the exam, right? Whether it is questionable or not, that's another thing. And makes key processes, tasks more efficient. On the other hand, threat to education is mainly academic integrity and the cognitive skills learning of the students. Because the learning process is improving in applying their cognitive skills. That is going to diminish with the use of AI. The next slide, one. So before we go into I call it smart assessment, right? So smart assessment for smartphones. Like, we need to ask, what is the purpose? Why are we asking this student this question or to do this exercise? So what is the purpose of assessment? What specific knowledge will be gained by the student? I mean, if there is no specific, cognitive enhancement, then what's the point of asking that assessment? What are the future application here? Remember, at the end of the day, student is going to work in an industry or in a university or in a school or somewhere. What is the specific application there? If the application does not impacted in the workplace, then what's the point of doing that assessment? How this be useful to improve the learning experience? So if you ask these questions, then you can first think about, try to minimize the assessment first. Secondly, the assessments are focused and is expect the student understanding. Not only the understanding, he need to show that he has understood that. And if that's the way we ask the question, then it will work. So my problem is, what are the examples? So I have come up with some example mainly from, I tried to cover areas outside the biomedical science. I got one example, and I got another example, a common example, the environmental science example, and I got a computer science example as well. The next slide, please. So the smart assessment. So this is, again, everybody knows. If you are a lecturer, you should know the Bloons Taxonomy. If you don't know that, you can't be a lecturer. You need to do the postgraduate certificate for teaching. So it starts from very low level of knowledge, comprehension, that's very low level assessment, application, analysis, evaluation, and creation. Why not we go back to Bloons Taxonomy and then try to emphasize any question we are going to ask, whether it is, despite of the level, whether it is the entry-level student or the final year student, we start asking the question at the application level and above, rather than asking knowledge reproduction and comprehension. Next slide, please. Not slide. So I have given the examples from assessment for learning, assessment of learning, and assessment as learning. So we can make the student at the level 0, or we call it, university entry-level students, we can make the student to use the artificial intelligence to gain the information. I'll give you the first example will be that they will get the information from Chat GPT, but we make sure that they read it, they understand it, and then come to a critical conclusion. I can give you one example. The other one is creative assessment that looks for individual application. So most of the diagnostic kind of questions are like that. Sometimes some of the illnesses has got more than 2 diagnoses. That doesn't mean that the one student diagnosis would be perfect, the other one is not bad. So the individual application, so the answers might be different from each student. So come up with that kind of question as well. And the assessment as learning is creative assessment, making group tasks. But again, these have got problems as well. The problem is time. It takes time because takes your time as a lecturer. And whenever I give this kind of presentation to my lecturers, they said, "Oh yeah, it's fine, it's fantastic. Where can I find the time to do this?" But remember that we are facing the challenge. We are coming, but these are not perfect answers. We have some answers because we are at the beginning of more or less confronting the artificial intelligence generated answers. We are only worried about that. We are not bothered about the other stuff which artificial intelligence can help in human progression. But this one is the only one we are worried. So, next slide. So, this is a traditional essay question. I actually made up something. So, write a 1,000-word essay on the environmental effects of global warming and explain how this can be minimized. This is more or less the entry-level student's question or second-year student question. The generative AI can produce a fantastic essay. I asked 3 times, each time it gave a different answers, but all answers are perfect, worth of 70% or above. So my question to you guys, how are we going to transform this to a smart assessment? I got my own way of doing it. I don't want to impose that. Probably if you come up with a better one, we will take the better one. So I wanted the answer should be the same. You need to do something. You are going to minimize the use of Chat GPT or generative AI. How are you going to answer? This is how I ask, my lecturers to do that. Sorry, Irene first and then Thomas.
Okay, I'm going to just suggest something to get everyone else thinking.
Yeah.
All right. I would suggest you turn it into a comparative kind of question and perhaps give the students some material to start with and ask them to compare and contrast different viewpoints on that.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. Sorry, Thomas.
Yeah. For me, this is not an ideal way how to give an assessment to the student, because first thing you focus on is the product, right? A 1,000-word essay. So then the student immediately focus, okay, the essay is what will be evaluated, which is true, but it's not the goal of the task here. Yeah? The goal is to make the student learn something. So I would start explore the effects of global warming, compare whatever Irene suggested. So to make it clear that the purpose is not to write an essay, this should come in the very end.
So how are you going to use? I mean, if I ask you, because I know that you are a computer scientist. So if you ask this, if you want the student to use the Chat GPT, but
if I want them to use it, to use it or not to use it?
To use it. You wanted to use it, but effectively use it, not just answer it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so ask GPT to write a text about the environmental effects and so on. Try to identify the facts that are either wrong or misleading. Identify the sources where you can check for correctness, and write your own evaluation on the product of ChatGPT.
What do you think about Thomas's suggestion? Because, by doing what Irene said and what Thomas said, without their knowledge, they will learn. That's what we wanted. As long as they learn, it's fine. Yes, they can use the Chat GPT, but sorry.
We want them to use it, maybe in the class it can have a practical session, and we might tell our students to ask Chat GPT about the environmental effects of global warming. So they might ask, what are the effects? They might start with that. And then, yes, of course, we cannot rely on Chat GPT, so they need to confirm that the knowledge provided by it is correct.
Mm-hmm.
So we can do it in classroom together, maybe.
Yeah.
For the first session.
Yeah.
They need to verify the knowledge provided by ChatGPT is correct, and then maybe they can form their essay later.
Yeah.
But if the problem is if we want them to learn how to write an essay, then maybe if we want them to avoid using ChatGPT, then we can say something like, okay, write on these are the effects, these are the solutions, write your own essay. But still, you can ask ChatGPT to do that.
Yeah. Right. I think,
maybe avoid a little.
Yeah. I mean, more or less, I'm really happy because I'm going to show what I am proposing is more or less all three of you are more or less agreeing with me. Anybody else has got any other ideas? Oh, online, is it? So check the online as well, just in case.
I can make it.
Yeah, it's all right because online people need.
Thank you. I think when we give assessments or let's say assignments to our students, we need to make them as individual and contextual as possible for preventing them to use or to abuse, generative AI like Chat GPT. For example, for this question, we can make students to first explore the general effects of global warming on our world, just like Thomas stated. But then they should think of their own city that they live in, their own context. The geographical, let's say, aspects of any place may show differences. I mean,
they can ask, for example, specifically in their area.
Yes. Then they need to discuss in groups, or maybe then they first search for effects specific to their context. Then they need to discuss to come up with solutions. Then they can go to the internet or other sources to search for other solutions, come up from the literature. Then they should compare their own, let's say, produce solutions and solutions from experts.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, and we need to have this kind of summer school more and more so that we can, share our ideas and come up with a better solution. I mean, all of you, what you said is actually trying to make the student understand, not opposing ChatGPT. You can use the ChatGPT, in a productive way. It's just like electricity. We are using it for that. I mean, if you are mad enough, you can put the hands in the electricity as well. But we are trying to stop putting a hand in the electricity. Anyone else from? Sorry, Abu.
Okay, this is my way of using ChatGPT. I'm not sure if I'm violating something.
Wait.
I'm not sure if I'm violating something or not. For example, I was checking ChatGPT in the meantime. For example, I asked ChatGPT to provide me some sources regarding, for example, global warming and the ways to stop it. And it's provided me lots of books, academic articles, and so on. Then the next prompt to ChatGPT is to give me brief information about the books and their parts. And I have very good things here, so that could be a starting point.
I mean, I never thought about that. This is really a good one because we can use it when, and also, I mean, Irene will agree with me that sometimes ChatGPT come up with some reference, and I mean, even if the reference is there, the student's duty to check whether the reference is there. So by doing that, if there's a reference, he will learn it. So yeah, that's very good.
For example, right now I have brief information about the books. I read the informations there and then go back to the book.
Yeah.
If it sounds good to me or it could be beneficial for me. So that might be a starting point.
Okay. That's
but
good.
the problem here is that I think Chat GPT stopped its information database in 2021, if I'm not true. Whatever. So that might be a limiting issue. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So let me show what I thought, and then it was actually, I didn't have time to do that, but some of my colleagues, they tried it, and then it was successful. So yeah, so this is how I suggested to my staff, and they tried it. So make a group of 3 and separate the question, just like Thomas said, separate the question in 3 different, instead of 1,000 words, they ask, write 500 words essay on global warming. So one student is only going to write 500 words essay on global warming using Chat GPT, but he is not going to submit that. He's going to bring it, okay? Second one, 500 word essay for environmental effects of global warming. So the second student will research on that. And the third student will research on how to minimize the global warming, and ask them to get together. And then the first student can explain to the second, and second can explain to third and first, and they will understand each other. And then they go back out. They can work together or go back and individually. If some of my lecturers, they said, oh, you submit a group assessment. Other lecturers said, oh no, you need individual assessment. But the problem is, when you go individual writing, they try to plagiarize the other version. But if it's a group, then they will input each other. But the only thing I asked them to do additionally, they also wanted to submit the Chat GPT generated answers from each of the students and their interpretation. So by this way, next slide, by this way, the assessment will ensure the student reads the essays produced by Chat GPT. That's what we wanted, isn't it? They need to read it rather than just cut and paste it. They need to read it, take short notes, and explain their findings into the group. In order to explain to their group, the peers can be really productive by asking, more or less, they think that is a stupid question, but they are innovative question. So he need to explain what is the summary of what he has learned from Chat GPT generated essay. And also, yes, sir.
I would suggest you don't even need to mention Chat GPT here. You could ask the student to do it from any source they like.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be Chat GPT.
That's true.
It could be anything. But you can tell them that if they want to use that, they can. But they can use other sources they wish.
Yeah, we can do that as well.
Because Chat GPT or tools like that is just one medium.
And
there are lots of other ones they could potentially use.
That's true as well. But because it is Chat GPT is a talk of the century, so I asked you to do that. But remember that the Chat GPT can produce final critical analysis as well. But the problem is, by asking them to upload their own Chat GPT generation and the critical analysis, we can see that whether they have understood. Remember, the aim of the assessment is to make them understand the subject they have learned. Whether they memorize or whether they apply, that's their problem. But the problem with this, my academics, they said, many of them said, yeah, it's really good, but it's a lot of time. You can't have both ways. I don't know the answer, how I can minimize a lot of time, because, the student need to work, and the academic, instead of reading the 1,000 words, they are going to read more or less, 4,500 words, because each 500 words they need to read as well. So that's additional one. The next slide. This is not something new. I tried it very long time ago, even before the Chat GPT came. This is, I think it's called Scale Up, it's called Student-Centered Active Learning Environment with Upside Down Pedagogy. We call it Scale Up, or we call it Flipped Learning. So this is the process. I'm just going to explain the process because of the time. We started late, but I need to finish as much as quick as possible. Then the week 1, the student groups are formed, 4 in the group titles are given, and each student will have a separate subtitle of the big title. And then after that, the lecturer will have the student group work. The lecturer will clarify what he is expecting to the students, and then he will give some lecturer feedback, ask them to use any kind of AI they wanted to use, generate answers, discuss with the lecturer. By discussing the lecturer is a two-way, what I call learning and teaching happening. Then the second week, they will upload the individual initial essays. It's not marked, it's initial essays. And the AI generated text as well with the student own summary. Then week 3, there will be, so within that time, lecturer would have read all these uploaded texts, and then he got the idea whether the student would have understood it or just uploaded it. Then they will have a group discussion with the lecturer. The academic input is there. The fact can be checked by other students and academics, and then look for the referencing as well. And then week 4, the student go back alone individually. Based on all these discussion and the short notes, they will write the final assessment and upload it. And finally, the lecturer will mark, right? So by this way, the lecturer is there, the student is leading. The students are leading the conversation, lecturer is only prompting. He's prompting and also making sure whatever the way they are using, whether it is Chat GPT or whether it is, like just Irene said, any other source, they are checking for referencing and everything. But what is the problem with that? The main problem is bloody 4 weeks. 4 weeks of lecturer's time. That is the main problem. I mean, my lecturers, none of them agree to do this, or not even tried it, because they don't have time to do that. Probably I might have to do this to get some information. The last one, probably, again, I need to warn you that this is a medical question, so there's a weird photograph. I will remove it as quick as possible. Yeah, next one. So, this is a question. 60-year-old male was recently admitted with that wound. Clinical investigation, you have given all these things. The questions, if you go one by one. Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, move forward. What is the probable diagnosis of this subject? Provide detailed justification of your answer. The next one is discuss the different therapeutic approaches that can be applied to this patient to lead a normal life, right? So this question, even if they use Chat GPT, they cannot answer properly unless otherwise they have understood what is the link between diabetes mellitus and the wound. But unfortunately, this is, I call ourselves, we are blessed. It's only, I can come up with only this kind of question in my area. I couldn't find any other question in other areas probably in computer science they might be, but I don't know whether history or things, this applied question might be different. Yes, sorry.
Might identify the disease through an image.
Yeah, but they need to justify it. Yeah, clinical side, and we need to have. Right, so if you go next, yeah. So, go one down, please. Yeah, so put everything because of the time. So again, the Chat GPT and even the Google, they can answer the question in a descriptive way, but they cannot justify why they say it is diabetes and how the diabetes is going to change it to atherosclerosis and how that is going to make the wound, right? So by that way, so this question can replace the question, explain the pathophysiology of diabetes mellitus. Same question, same answer, But if you ask, explain the pathophysiology of diabetes mellitus, put it in Chat GPT, you will get a perfect answer. But this one, it will struggle. Yes?
I think you are too much focused on ChatGPT. Like ChatGPT is the most stupid.
Well,
AI
you know,
application,
what I'm saying
it got the most media attention.
That's right. I mean, not
But
only
there
Chat
is-
GTP, but even the what I call, if you put the photograph there, I don't think. I mean, I don't know the name of the AI. So one of my students tried to put the photograph in. It came up with a descriptive answer.
to ChatGPT.
Not ChatGPT, some other thing. I forgot the name. So he put that one photograph to see the answer. It came with a descriptive answer, but it didn't come the diagnostic answer. So
Yeah,
and the reason I use
pretty
ChatGPT,
sure there is an AI for that. Check, there is an AI for that.com. There are 4,000 or something like AI applications. and
I
that
will have a
should-
look at it, yeah.
Should be an application that
Yeah.
comes
But at
with
the
a diagnosis
moment-
based on the picture and gives. you
yeah,
the
at the
justification.
moment, I am relying on the students' inability to understand all the different AI. But there will be a time that they will know that these kind of AI. I didn't know. Thanks for telling me. I didn't know. But one of my students, he in front of me, he checked with that photographic AI. I forgot the name. It's a funny name, to see whether it came with a descriptive answer, but not the diagnostic answer we wanted. The one other, yes.
I'm not sure about just ignorance of mine. The artificial intelligence can identify similar images, even if it's not the same image, because we can use clinical practice images from our daily routine practice and put those images in the essays or the questions that we are forming to the students. So my question is, does AI identify similar images?
I heard that they can identify similar, and that's the reason that one of my students tried it.
Okay.
They are
So
again, you
it
know.
does not have to be that specific image. Okay.
Yeah, and also as Thomas said, that there will be millions of other AI as well. But at the moment, what I am investing on, our students, they don't know all these are existing, not all of them. But there will be a time they come to know. And until then, we can manage with that. Right, so the next one is, this is not at all mine. Is somebody, the Felix Argov and others, they did it. This is about the computer science using they are actually developing a AI generated tool to understand the phonetic pattern of the people who are suffering from dementia, and then using the AI as a tool to first diagnose it, and also second, how to manage it as well. So this is not me, this is actually, this group has already started working on that. And because one of my colleagues from my university is a collaborator, he gave us that question as well. So the expected outcome would be, sorry, if you go for the next one. So it's again, you know, the students are expected to use the Chat GPT or any other artificial intelligence, and then try to get those answers and try to develop a pattern of phonetic. So it's more or less a computer science question. So the code and stuff, so that how to identify the phonetics, talk pattern of people who are suffering from dementia, and how to help them the prognosis as well. So in my point of view, just to finish off with the next slide, the concluding remark, an outright ban of using generative AI or any other AI is not an effective way to deter academic misconduct. Smart assessment should be designed to have the potential to protect against integrity challenges of generative AI, and then producing smart assessment may be challenging in subject areas, some other subject areas like some history and other stuff. And again, you know, this is more or less is a vicious cycle we are going on. We are coming with something, and then the AI generated will come up with something else, and then we need to come up with. with something. It's more or less a learning process as an academic. It's a learning process for the AI generated to improve as well. In a way, I call it vicious cycle. It might be a productive cycle as well, but we don't know. And as I told you before, even in this one, you know, I mainly concentrated on the AI that students know. And again, you know, Thomas corrected me that there are other AIs which students yet to know, and when they use that, then this will become redundant. So it's a cycle anyway. So, but my aim is to, yes, AI is fine, we can use it for AI, but as long as we make sure that the aim of the assessment is the student to learn and apply. That is met, then yes, we can use the AI. Hope I gave you some ideas, and then I'll stop there. Yeah, these are the references. Yeah.